to Mountain Slider Garage. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing the TKI belt drive for the Arctic Cat. This belt drive you can put on any Arctic Cat model, any Pro Climb model from 2012 to current. They have different kits for each year sled. So if you have a 2012 or a 15 or a 18, there's different kits for each model depending on if you have the extended chain case or not and what jack shaft you have. So you have to check with them if you want a belt drive for your specific model, which one you would need. But anyway, we're going to go over the install and a little ride video to see if this about $1,000 to buy one of these, how worth it is. The other thing we're going to do, we're going to weigh it on the sled before and after. I've only weighed like the parts before that we put on, the parts we took off, and to see what the difference is. I've never weighed the actual sled before and after. So we're going to do that. See how much weight this really pulls off your sled. So let's get into this. Let's look and see what you get for your money when you order one of these. So this here is what you get, the whole kit. You get a set of instructions, you get a new bearing you get your belt cover with the new speedometer pickup, you get your oil tank if you want oil injections to stay current on your sled. I bought an extra belt for mine, so I got 2 belts. You get your upper drive pulley that goes on your jack shaft, your lower drive pulley that goes on your drive shaft, and then you got this new housing for your electronic oil pump if you have one of the newer models with the electric oil pump with the C-Tech 2 motor. So we're going to go ahead and install this kit on the Alpha over here, and we're going to see how it works. But first, let's weigh this. Let's see what it weighs before and then what it weighs after. We're going to come over here, we're going to turn our scale on, and then we're going to zero this thing out. You can see our scale there. We're starting at 0. All right, we're going to go ahead and lift this. All right, now it's completely off the ground. Now this thing, you know, it's got its tunnel bag on the back with a shovel in it. It's got some tools in it. You know, I've got my Ice Age spindles on it, which weigh a little bit more than stock. The wrap weighs a couple of pounds. Plus, it's not full of gas. So we're going to weigh this just the way it's kind of sitting. Since it's not full of gas, you're not going to get a real accurate, like full ready to ride reading, but should end up at about 508 pounds, almost 509 pounds. It's right in there. 508.7 is about where we're going to be. Now I've also made sure on this that the oil tank is completely full. I think the only fair way to weigh this is with the stock oil tank full on the machine, and then the stock oil tank that comes on the belt drive full, just to get an accurate weight of when the oil's full stock and the oil full with the TKI drives, to get a real accurate kind of what kind of a weight we drop with the belt drive. Follow along here. We're going to pull the side panel off. Now, if we have another video, I'm not going to show you disassembling the chain case because we have another video in the Pro Climb section on YouTube about disassembling the chain case. On this, we're going to skip that part. And we're going to get back on the video here, just installing the belt drive itself. So if you need to know how to pull the chain case apart on this, find that video. It's in the Arctic Cat Pro Climb section on the YouTube channel. It's called Arctic Cat Chain Case Disassembly. And follow along, then we'll go test this on the snow and see if it's worth the $1,000 we spend on it. Go for it. All right, now we've pulled our chain case completely apart. This is as far apart as we took it in the chain case disassembly video that we did earlier in the year. So if you can get it down this far by yourself, you can easily get the belt drive on by yourself. Now, the other thing we need to do before we really start installing is there's one part of this we didn't cover in the chain case disassembly video. That's these clips that are, once you pull the gear off the upper, there's 2 more clips you got to pull off because you have to replace this upper jack shaft bearing. So this one's like the clip we took off on the front side of this gear. Now this is like the other one. You got to kind of just work it off in a spiral. Snap ring off that goes on the back side here. You already took one off on the front here to get your gear off. There's another one like this that goes on the back here. This one was a little bit harder to get off because it's farther in. I had to work at it for a while. It was kind of a pain to get off there. I don't know if anyone has any good ideas on how to get those out of there, but the next thing we have to do is pull this external snap ring off, and then there's another one of these little coil snap rings right, you can see right here, this thing. We're going to just pull this off right now. Take that off. So we need to pull this bearing out, and we're going to replace that bearing with a piece that we get, a new bearing that we get from TKI. So we're going to pull a snap ring off. There's a washer behind it. We're going to pull that off. Now you have to take your heat gun and heat this whole area of, now this chain case is made out of magnesium. We're going to heat this. We're going to try and expand it. We don't want to heat the bearing because we want to expand the magnesium that the chain case is made out of to slide that bearing out easier. So we're going to go ahead and do all that, and then we'll come back. Okay, now this jack shaft bearing can be a little bit hard to get out. I've already gone around with my heat gun. I've only been able to get it out this far. And if you want to see if it's stuck in your case or if it's stuck in your jack shaft, you can move the jack shaft a little bit like that, and it's going to move the jack shaft. So mine's not hanging up on my jack shaft because that's pretty loose. It's just hanging up on the edge of the case there. So it's going to take a little bit more heating, probably a little bit more work to get it out. Now it took a lot of heat and a lot of coaxing this bearing to come out because it was in there pretty good. And it's pretty warm right now. I probably spent a good 10 minutes heating up the surrounding area on what was holding the bearing in. And then I was able to get it out about halfway, and then it cooled down enough I had to go another heat cycle, heat it some more, get it out a little bit more. Then it kind of seized up again to where I couldn't move it, so I had to heat it up a third time. So it probably took 20 minutes of heating and coaxing and pulling this out a little bit of time to get this bearing all the way out. So don't lose your patience with it. Just work at it for a while. It'll eventually come out if you get this whole area warm enough. Okay, so the other thing we need to do to pull this apart to get it ready to assemble the TKI belt drive is there's two of these 30 Torx bolts that hold the oil pump into the case. I've already drained all the oil out of this. And so we took both these screws out, one there, one on the other side. Then you just this is held in with some O-rings. You just kind of work around and coax it out of here one side at a time, and it just loosens up those O-rings that kind of hold it in place, and just like that. And I still got a bunch of oil in there that didn't drain out when I drained it before. That got caught in the baffle. We're going to put this in a rag so it doesn't drip oil all over. We're just going to put it down here in the bottom of our chain case. And this next part's a little bit hard to understand, but what you need, since there's no threads in here to lock this outer gear on, we're going to install a gear, and that's what this part is. They call this part the retainer. So what they want you to do, this part, it's what's going to happen when you tighten this down. These two pieces are going to compress together, and this piece is going to go inside this piece. So they have you put a little bit of grease on here, a little bit of grease inside, and then I put a little anti-seize on the end of my bolt so I don't risk having a problem with the threads. And you screw this in. I put a washer on here too so the edges of this hex bolt don't dig into my aluminum. And then the last thing before we insert this and tighten it down they want you to do is this green Loctite that comes with the kit. They want you to put a bunch of this in all these little spiral grooves here so it locks us into place really well, because you don't want this falling out while you're riding and losing your top gear. All right, now that we got all that in, we're going to put this in place here. And that's snapped in all the way. And we're going to start tightening this. As you're tightening this, you want to pull it off every once in a while to check your progress, because that inside piece, we want it to pull all the way out. We want it to pull all the way out to everything in the threads, and the whole thing is flush with the end of your jack shaft. So now you can see I have my new threads in there. That's what we're going to use to tighten the upper pulley on this on with. Now we're going to kind of go through the reverse process to replace our upper jack shaft bearing. This is the bearing that came out. See, this has no seal around it to keep the oil in it, because this bearing is oiled by the oil in your chain case. But this one has, you see, it's got a seal here, a seal there. So this is sealed with oil inside, because since this is going to be dry now because there's no oil in here with the chain, or excuse me, with the belt, we have to replace this. And to do this, we're going to have to heat this up again with our gun, and we're going to have to push this in there. Then we're going to have to put the clip back on that holds this in place before we can put our upper pulley on. Now the next step of this, we have our bearing in. We heated this up with the heat gun again, pushed our bearing back in there. The next thing you do, this snap ring you took out that holds your bearing in place in the case, you're going to reinstall that, and then you're going to install your top gear and a bolt. Now the silly thing about this, there's one criticism I have with this whole thing, is it tells you that you need an 1.5 inch long bolt to secure this in. You can either cut this one that comes with the kit, or you can source your own 1.5 inch long bolt. Well, I just spent $1,000 on this whole kit, and I have to go to the hardware store and buy one bolt for it that I need, or I have to make one out of this. It seems a little silly on a kit this expensive that it's not going to come with the bolt that I need, but that's neither here nor there. I had a bolt after looking through my bolt bin that fit. So remember, you need a standard bolt here. This isn't a metric bolt. Now the first step on the lower gear we have to do Since this lower gear is also an open design here, that gear's not going to get any oil if we just leave it like this. So it comes with this oil seal we're going to pop in here. And then we're going to have to, before we pop this in, we're going to have to pack this bearing full of grease. So we're going to go, we'll pack this bearing full of grease. We're going to snap this in. It just snaps into place. So we have our upper gear on. So we're going to put on our lower gear. Now it's not real, in the directions didn't really give a lot of instruction on how this goes, but this gear does say this side goes to the outside. Now you don't want to put these together before you install this. You want to put this gear on first down here, and then this hub on second. Problem is if you bolt these together first, you're gonna have a real hard time getting it down in there and getting it on the drive shaft. So you put that gear on first, make sure the side that says this side goes to the outside is facing us. Then this one goes on like this. Just slide that one in place. Okay, and then the last thing we're gonna have to do to this clip that came off our stock bottom gear, we're going to put this on the hub to hold the whole hub and bottom gear in place. And then we're ready to put the belt on and then the tensioner. The next step we're going to do is we're going to finish installing the lower gear and the belt. Now before you tighten the lower gear on, you want to make sure you put the belt in. If you tighten down all these Allen heads that tightens the lower pulley hub with the pulley, you're not going to be able to get the belt on. So you want to get the belt on first because there's not enough room down in here. And also you want to put the belt on so you can actually read this if you're looking at it, kind of like the belt on your snowmobile clutches. Everything in down in there. Now we're going to go ahead and Loctite all these Allen headed bolts. Now these are also not metric bolts, these are standard bolts. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to install all these bolts, bolt the lower pulley to the pulley hub on the bottom, put our snap ring on our bottom, put this cover back on with the bolt, with some blue Loctite on that bolt, and then we're completely set up to put the outer cover on. All right, now we're going to put on our cover plate. Now we had to install these two tabs that hold our oil tank to this if you have a kit that's going to have an oil tank in your oil pump. And these are put on by these 3 screws here. There's 3 on the other side. You can see them on the back side here. There's 3 screws there, 3 screws there, and that holds those in place. Then you got to put this bottom screw into each of those. That holds the tank up. So when you install this, you have to make sure that this part is facing up, and you have to install that on this tapered post here inside your chain case. So we're going to slip this down in here. Make sure it goes around the belt. Get that on the post. Now I got these new hex bolts that I'm going to put in to hold this cover plate in place. These didn't come with my kit, but I wanted to use these instead of the factory bolts that came on this. Now the other thing we had to do, okay, we installed our pump into this housing that comes with the kit using the stock 2 Torx bolts. We put that in there, put the Torx bolts in. Now these 2 bolts come with this. There's a little washer you're going to put on this bolt, and that's going to go through there. And then this is going to go on the back side of it like this. And this is going to go down right in here. Then there's another one of these bolts with the spacer on it that's going to go down below it. That holds your oil pump in place. Now we're going to go tighten all those down. The last thing we need to do is this bolt with the nut on it that screws into the side here. This is the bolt that you screw in to tighten your belt with. So this is going to screw in all the way. It's going to push the belt tensioner this way like this to tighten the belt up. So we're going to put all that together. We'll get to that point, and then we'll come back and we need to fit all the oil lines in and we'll be done. Okay, now we have the whole outer cover bolted up, all the bolts tightened down. We have this bolt tightened down on the upper pulley. We have the belt tensioned with the tensioner you screw in down here. This bolt and the nut come in the kit. You got to install that for the belt tensioner. Then you install and tension the belt with initial 1/4 inch of play. And this comes with a little inch meter right here, so you can see how much you can move that belt back and forth. 1/4 inch. It says of 1/8 inch when hot, because when this all heats up, you're going to have some of this expand. And so if you set it at 1/4 inch when it's cold, when it grows, you should still have that 1/8 inch. So what we're going to do now, the last thing we have to do is install the fittings on the oil tank. So we're going to install the return line, which is this hose here on the oil tank right here. And then the oil that's going to feed the oil pump, which is down here, we're going to just drill a hole in the bottom. These are 1/2-inch holes. The kit comes with 2 of these, and one of these you're going to cut this end off of. So we're going to go ahead and drill those holes. We're going to install these, and we're going to come back and we're going to put our oil tank on. Okay, now we've got our 1/2-inch hole drilled here, our 1/2-inch hole drilled there. Now we have these grommets that are come with this. The elbow with the long one that you didn't cut off, this one's going to go on the top for the return line. You can push these down here. If you have a hard time getting them in, you can put a little 2-stroke oil on them. That'll help you be able to push that down in there. Then the other one, which you cut off the end of, that's going to go in the bottom of the tank for the oil to feed the oil pump, just like that. Now we've already attached our oil lines to this going down to the pump with our little crimp clamps there. Yes, we want to make sure there's no air bubbles in the oil tank down here. The oil tank on the top of it has this little bleed screw right here. When you want to put oil in their tank, you're going to leave that screw in place just for a minute. You don't have to tighten it down all the way. Put some oil in your tank, maybe about halfway. You're going to start seeing it coming down through the line here. Okay, now we've put about 1/2 tank of oil in our oil tank. We're going to take out the little bleeder screw right here on top. And we should start seeing our oil. You should start seeing it drain down the line there. So I had some air bubbles in the line there, and was flicking the line that helps air bubbles wash down. Now you're just going to start at some point seeing the oil bubble up out of this hole. You're going to want to put your cap back in when you see that. That will get all the air out of there. Okay, now we got the oil. You can look down the hole. You can start seeing it starting to come up really close to the top here. It's going to start spilling out over here any second. Oh, there we go. All right. I'll wipe off a little bit of oil that came out. And we're going to tighten that filler cap down. All right. Now we're good to go. Now the one thing I want to do with this oil line, it's kind of long. It just helps me get the tank in and out of here without getting a kink in it. So once we get this down in here, we're going to want to make sure that oil line isn't kinked anywhere. And we want to make sure it's not going to rub on anything. So we're going to tie that all together so it's not rubbing on everything along with the wires with the vibration, so we don't get any holes or anything. So completely installed TKI belt drive. We're going to have to put this on. That's our oil return line. I'll find a little clamp to put on there. Our belt adjuster here, we got our belt adjusted the way the TKI recommends. We got all the bolts tightened up, and a super nice kit from TKI. Really well thought out, really well put together. And we're going to go out and run this thing to see how different our sled feels with that less rotating mass and with less weight on the sled. We're going to go, once we get all this put back on, we'll put on the muffler, get everything put back to where it goes, and then we're going to weigh this again to see how much this kit really drops off this sled. As I was tying up all my wires here, I got one zip tied up there, keeping these all in place. And when I installed this footwell right here with these 2 screws here, if you look up through here, that screw right there, that one right there, is awfully close to my oil tank. I don't like that. I don't know if that's going to, at some point with things rattling around, if that might actually touch the oil tank and rub a hole in it. So I'm going to cut off 1/8 inch of that screw so it's not so close to my oil tank there. Just some little things like that you want to check as you install this, just to make sure you're not going to have any problems down the road. Okay, so we got our TKI belt drive all installed. We've got the oil tank filled up. We're going to go ahead and weigh this to see how much weight we lost by adding this belt drive on here. Scale zeroed out. All right, let's go up here and take a look at this. We're at just over, hair over 500 pounds. So we lost from 508 to 500, so about 8 pounds. So about an 8-pound weight loss, installing a belt drive, that's pretty healthy weight loss. That's nice. You know, I replaced that stock can. I can probably lose close to another 15 or so, depending on which can I lose. That's over 20 pounds pulling off this side. Some of that weight loss is in rotating mass. That should also help the engine feel more peppy, rev up a little faster, feel a little stronger. And so we're going to go out and ride this, see what it's like, and see if we can notice any difference really from the stock chain setup. Really nice product here from TKI. Highly recommend it to anyone who's looking at getting rid of their chain case. Probably anyone could install this with, as long as you have the right tools, the Torx bits, and the other stuff it takes to pull it apart. Like I said before, you can go to our chain case disassembly video, then this video to help you install this. Real happy with the Alpha. This should make it even more fun to ride. Rich from Mountain Slider Garage. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Subscribe to our YouTube page, and we'll see you next time at Mountain Slider Garage. Okay, now that we have the Ice Age spindles on our Alpha, the TKI belt drive on it, we're gonna go take this thing for a spin. It's the first time we'll ride it with the belt drive on. See what that does for us. Pretty nice day, nice and sunny. And let's go ride this thing and see how it feels with the belt drive. Go. 2019 Alpha, got the Ice Age spindles on it, just put the TKI belt drive. It's a 165 3-inch track. Otherwise the motor's completely stock. I've messed with the clutching a little bit, even has a stock muffler on it. I mean, really phenomenal sled. The belt drive gives it a little more throttle response, and just makes it feel like it revs up a little quicker, and the on and off throttle is just phenomenal. And in riding in these snow conditions with the Ice Age spindles, amazing combination, the two. I mean, if someone were to ask me which one I would do first, the spindles or the belt drive, I don't know what I would say. It's kind of a toss-up. They're both good, but in a completely different regard. You would just have to see where you think your money would be better spent. If you're a real backcountry rider, a lot of carving, a lot of playing in the trees, a lot of maneuverability, maybe I'd lean towards the spindles, just because it gives you a lot better agility and more fun factor when you're in super technical terrain. Otherwise, I can't really say which one I would do better. If you're more into wanting a little bit more power, better throttle response, want the sled to operate a little better, maybe I'd lean towards the belt drive. But now I have the belt drive gears on mine, my TKI drive, are the same gearing as stock gears. I wanted to do that just because I wanted to see how this belt drive would react using the same gear ratio as what the stock comes on a 165 Alpha. So TKI, huge shout out. They make an amazing product. You can buy any of their products. They're great. Their customer service is probably second to none. It's phenomenal. The same thing with Ice Age. Next thing we're going to do this sled, we're going to put the Bikeman Stage 2 on it, the full single pipe, the torque link flash in the head. And that's, I think, really going to make this into an amazing sled. And I hear people say that whole Stage 2 can run with the pump gas turbos. I mean, we'll see, we'll test it. My guess is the Alpha works so good that it'd probably be close when we're talking about a 3-pound truly pump gas sled. Anyway, Mountain Slider Garage, hope you guys have a great winter. Sorry we had a late start. We're getting all our testing done. The snow just came so late. And anyway, subscribe to the channel. Red button right down there on YouTube says subscribe. And we'll see you later from Mountain Slider Garage.